So let's turn things over to Ryan, the founder of Bilby.ai. Maybe you just want to give a brief introduction on yourself and walk us through your firm and what your focus is, Ryan.
Sure, thanks for that. I'll be pretty quick because I prepared a bit too much, I think, and I want to let Ben speak after me. So we run an AI company. I think I've given the sort of comprehensiveness of what came beforehand. Maybe the best thing to do is to just sharpen some of the focus from the perspective of someone who kind of makes AI. It sounds very scary. It's just I, it's intelligence first, right? Like a lot of what you're hearing and following and sort of trying to come to terms with is not actually, it's tricky. The part that's difficult is sort of thinking about what works well putting intelligence into a machine and what doesn't work well putting intelligence in a machine. So I'll sort of try and talk a little bit about what we do as we go along, but mainly what I thought would be maybe useful, given this is on AI fintech, is to sort of talk through start to finish an example of exactly what I mean by it's the I that matters more in the AI than anything else. So this is the sort of this is what I used to spend my life doing. It's riveting. This is a way of mapping out every decision that the Chinese government makes by rank and order. So I used to do it manually. So in other words, I would sit there and I would take a policy. This particular one was Belt and Road for a few years. And I would look at the rules of the Chinese political system and sort of one by one put those little sort of maroon dots that you're squinting at the screen at, no doubt now. Each of them I would put in manually, and that was something I used to do as discipline to myself. I was a professor, and just to force myself to be like, have I got everything before I sort of drew the conclusions that I could draw. I'm not gonna lie, this took me at least 2 months of my life drawing this diagram once upon a time of just trying to figure out where everything sat. The program, the sort of company I ended up founding, I basically the backstory behind why I sort of got a bit jack of this, other than it's 2 months of my life, and that's quite a long time, is that I began life as a computer programmer. And so I thought to myself, this doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Why don't we take this manual process and we get a computer to do it? And then as sort of AI has developed, so have what we've done developed. But at heart, like I still sit here with a pencil and a piece of paper most of the time and map out structured data. And then I think about how that can then explode into being everything. So it can sort of form AI, or in other words, a machine that thinks for itself. So the actual company I run is an AI policies and regulations co-pilot. We mainly work with finance. That was why John asked me to talk a bit about this today. In essence, we went from one person sort of trying to read things to making machines that read every government document. So everything that comes out of a government, we're across about 15 countries now, expanding quite rapidly. And then by having every document come in and applying the same rules that I sort of showed you before with this like giant, my friend used to call it a wedding planner, like it's sort of like when you move all the seats at a wedding and you move people around. By building in the rules that I made on a piece of paper into a machine and then sucking in every single document a government puts out, you're able to have a machine do exactly that same process for you. And so what actually happens in practice is that you start to be able to predict things. Now, people sort of say, wow, prediction is amazing. Prediction a lot of the time is just knowing actually where you are at scale. When you think about something like AI, what's really insanely promising about it is not that it can beat a human very often. Gaetan mentioned, for example, chess and things like that. It's a very specified use case because it has very strict rules. In the real world, it's really, really hard to train a computer to beat a human. I've spent most of my adult life trying to do it. But what a machine can do so much better than a human is take simple things that a human has managed to sort of induce and find out, and then pull in so much information that like in seconds it's available to you. So here on the right-hand side of your screen is the actual Chinese article that originally came across our screens a few years ago, that we predicted the crackdown on online education that happened in China that destroyed about $1 trillion of value, and made us quite popular with fintech institutions because we could argue that we were predictive. But actually what came in was just a signal. It's just that because the computer could read this signal in a way trained to it by a human, it could sort of come out and predict. And so, what we now do for a living is we do that to make terminals and do various things like that. I'm going very fast here just in the interest of time. Where this is so exciting is if we think about that same principle of taking one use case where you teach a computer to do something and then add in every piece of information at once, you actually can cut across many verticals. Now, this for a startup founder is both incredibly exciting and incredibly frustrating. I'll talk a little bit more on the frustrating part, but here's this exciting part. At your fingertips right now, I've just given you what we have in Bilby, because we do government as it applies to different areas of fintech. I have in my machine, I have a specific craft, which is knowing that article is important rather than another article. I have a quant analyst that goes through everything and is constantly running the numbers. Gaetan talked about a trading instrument. This is another way of sort of looking at that. You have a constantly on quant analyst. I have a comparison or analogy machine, i.e., does this signal that I showed you before match another signal, and go through all of history and go back and check and check and check. I have databases of unique info. That means that I can be like, like, what did China say last week? Full stop. What did India say? Are the two different? Just even having structured data that can be compared across countries, incredibly exciting to build things. And finally, I have a who's who of everybody and their biographic information of everything they've ever done in their lives, jobs, whatever, that can be matched to all these documents. Now, John asked me to sort of talk about the front office, middle office, back office distinction in finance and how they come through. I'm probably not going to have time to go through all parts of that, but what I did instead was sort of be like, just on the example I've given you, if you look at the middle box here on financial services, just on that ability to pull in everything a government says and match it to the tools I showed you on the last slide, you can have in financial services, policy insights that are tradable, trading investment research insights, risk management insights, legal insights, compliance processes, KYC, AML, a lot of things Gaetan talked about done for you automatically just by pushing a button. And it all goes back though to the eye originally of training a computer to do something that's a bit of a pain in the butt. And Ben, that's going to talk next, does this at an even bigger scale in an even more impressive way. Like, this is the really exciting part of AI. The bad part of AI in some ways is you can see this thing I put up on screen saying creating many use cases and ideal users. The people like us running a startup or founding a startup, this is often suicide, right? If you have to have all of these users and all of these exciting things, it becomes really hard to know where to start, how to actually get your startup focused, how to get traction, all those sorts of things. And so again, I don't quite have the time to go through all of it, maybe in another session, or I'll leave the slide up on screen for a little bit. But you can see is what I've cut here is shown that, each of these stages AI can improve in terms of how we think about information. The challenge for us as founders now is to show how we can take this giant beast of AI and actually really nail the use cases and turn into something that makes money and adds value to people. Because as a startup, that's like going to be pushing our buttons every day. Very quickly, just to show finally my point on the eye, this is how we then did Vietnam, India, a whole bunch of other countries. So I just wanted to show you that this isn't just an isolated case, but rather what's really exciting about building companies today, which is to take insights that we form from our life or our work or just from born, getting an organization of lots of smart people together and then expanding it out so it can cover millions upon millions, often trillions of data points. Or in the case of Ben, turning to a really successful company that helps other businesses get rid of a massive pain point. So I'll stop there. Thanks very much for your time.